Good morning from Texas.
Chad and Cam Coffee Clash, grabbed coffee. Sorry, we're late recording this one. My coffee maker broke. How can you have Coffee Clash without coffee?
So we ran to the store, got a new coffee pot, cleaned the coffee pot, packed up all the garbage, put it in the garbage can, made coffee, and then I was able to come out from under the bed.
Right.
And now we're ready to start going.
Right. Because if I don't have my coffee, you need to
See that scar?
be careful.
Right
Oh,
there?
whatever. He has a scar there, but it's not for me.
But you got me. And I was like,
Not for me.
So, Kim has a wonderful presentation for what today is?
Murderous Monday.
Murderous Monday. I like Murderous. We were arguing. We weren't arguing. We were batting the idea around for our when we talk about what on Monday, whether it's Maniacal Monday, Murder Monday. I like Murderous.
Murderer Monday. I mean, we came up with all kinds of things. But Murderous Monday, I think, fits the topic the best.
We can cover many different things.
Because if we'd gone with Maniacal Monday, all I would have thought was, Maniacal Laugh, Maniacal Laugh. So.
One of the best lines in any of the true Muppet movies.
Right.
Okay.
So, the first thing I want to talk about, just to make sure everybody understands, there's 3 different categories of Murderous Monday murderers. You've got your mass murderer.
Your mass murderer.
Which means they killed 4 or more people in one location within a couple minutes. So the the person who had an assault rifle, military style assault rifle, in Las Vegas, in his hotel room during a music festival, and shot a whole bunch of people. You look like you don't agree with that.
Keep going.
Okay. Number 2 is a serial killer. A serial killer is someone who killed 3 or more people on separate occasions with no cooling off period, with cooling off periods in between each event. And a cooling off period would be like, okay, I killed this person. Okay, I satisfied my urge. Would that be the way to put it?
Yes.
That would be a cooling off period.
Or
until they go kill the next person.
In both the cases, to perform it in an illegal manner.
Okay. It didn't say anything about a legal manner, but how would you kill somebody legally? Yes?
Army, military.
Okay, so you're right. That would be in a legal manner.
A police officer defending his or other people's lives.
Me defending my home and myself and my family against a horde of people that try to come through my front door.
Oh, you're just not going to let that one go, are you? Okay, go ahead. What was the third one?
Okay, the third one is what is called a spree killer. Now, a spree killer is defined as 2 or more victims at more than one location, considered a single event because of the lack of cooling off period.
Like that Woody Harrelson movie where they jump in the car and they take off, go cross country, and everybody who gets in their way.
Right.
Okay.
Now, spree killer is not used so much these days because it either fits a mass murderer or a serial killer. It really does. If you look at these killers that they call spree killers or rampage killers, they're either mass or serial. Seriously, as I've gone through stuff. So spree killer is not really a word that's used anymore to define killers of more than one.
I can kind of see that. A spree killer is kind of a niche.
Right.
A mass murderer or a
Serial
killer who goes on a spree. It's more of a adjective than the noun, kind of.
And we're going to explain that more here right now because we're going to talk about Paul Ezra Rhoades. Paul Ezra Rhoades has no nickname. Sorry. Copy hasn't kicked in yet. Even though if you look on Murderpedia, yes, there is a website called Murderpedia. They're calling him a spree killer, but he doesn't fit the definition of a spree killer. He killed more than 3 people. They were in different locations. There were cooling off periods, especially in between the first victim and the 3rd victim. So you can't say he didn't have a cooling off period. In fact, the grocery store killer was the name given to a different murderer. So it's not Paul Ezra Rhoades. And it was kind of disappointing as I was going through this, because this episode in American life in the 1987s really affected Chad and I and our families and friends. We were there. We lived through it. We saw the impact it had on the community. With people locking their doors, people would be sitting there with loaded guns by their chairs in their living rooms, and gun sales shot through the roof. So, and we experienced it because we were there. Not that we ran into Paul Ezra Rhoades. Never ran into him at all.
He was a big, spooky monster of a guy.
He was. But as I was researching this, there were a lot of things I could get information on through the states, because Idaho and Nevada were involved in this this case. Utah and Wyoming were trying to link Paul to cases they had. They're like, oh, it's this, it's that. But they could never definitively link him to those cases. So it's pretty much a nothing burger with Wyoming and Utah. But Paul Ezra Rhoades was born in Idaho on January 18th, 1957. I guess that's kind of, for me, I'm like 1957. Man, he should have been old, but okay, we were born in the 60s.
He's only, what, 10 years older than us? 7 years older than us?
He's like 12 years older than me. But still, because we were so young when this happened, it's like 57, really? But on December 28th, he killed Stacy Baldwin in a mini Red Barn convenience store in Blackfoot, Idaho. One of her friends had driven by, saw this green Ford LTD in the parking lot. Drove past, went about her business, went back to look for Stacy. Stacy didn't answer when she called for her. That's because Paul had tried to rape her, took her out to an archery field, murdered her, and yeah, her body was found like 3 days later. Now, some stories will say, okay, she was found at a dump. Okay, she was found in an alley. Okay. In Idaho, you have to understand, there's a lot of places on the desert where people will go and shoot. And it's just a place on the desert you shoot, but a lot of people call it a dump because people will dump their goods and people go out and shoot those goods. But when Paul was born, he was the oldest of 4 children. And when he was 4 years old, he contracted polio. And because of contracting polio, he was hospitalized many times throughout his life, childhood, adulthood, just off and on, because of the polio. And sorry, I kind of got out of order, but I wanted to talk about that. So remember, on January 28th, 1987, he murdered Stacy Baldwin in Blackfoot, Idaho, which is about 25 minutes from Idaho Falls, Idaho. So on March 17th, 1987, he went into Buck's gas station, which, I'm sorry, I can picture Buck's. I don't want to harm the business. I'm not going to give more explanation.
They're not there anymore, are they?
No, it's now not a Maverick, but it's a big gas station that's
big
bought
chain.
Yeah. He murdered Nolan Haddon, who was working at the convenience store. After they found Nolan's body in a cooler, and he had been shot through the chest and the back, the shot through the chest penetrated his lung. He lost his life.
Now, not to interrupt, but could he have been related to our friend Haddon?
I had that thought myself.
Dr. Haddon. Because his uncle was having some mental issues and ran around town calling himself Ringo Starr.
Right. And see, that wasn't the Haddon I was thinking of, but the Haddon I was thinking of was a very good person, would never do anything like this.
Right.
Or would turn in.
I wonder if that was a brother of the 3 Haddon brothers.
I don't think so. Nolan?
Oh, I'm going to have to look into that.
Because Nolan, I think, would have been too... If Nolan was a brother of those 3, he would have had to have been the oldest.
Uh-huh.
And sorry, because we live in this area, we know people with that last name, and so we're really trying to cover personalities and not implicate anybody or, but I don't recall anything at school on that one of anybody going, oh my gosh.
That's true. We didn't hear anything, so it's probably completely unrelated. But yeah, we have a friend who's an incredibly successful and very impressive surgeon. And his father was a very wonderful man,
Right.
And they grew up in my neighborhood. So knowing them was, an honor. And you just go, if they kept that a secret in their life, what? Because it hits that close to home.
Well, no, because Nolan was the one that was killed at Buck's.
Right.
Rhoades killed Haddon.
Right.
So, but, yeah, there was never anything.
Well, I understand. Well, it was a terrible death in the family that could just rock the whole family to the foundation. And since we never heard about it, I really hope that's not our friends.
Right. But the police were able to determine, after they found Haddon's body, that there was a transaction entered in the register right before the killing, and that like $221 had been stolen, something around that number. And that was on the 17th of March. So, in my opinion, if you've got 18 days between the first and the second killings, you have a cooling off period. Mm-hmm. So he does not fit a spree killer. He had the cooling off period. He fits the definition of a serial killer. But especially since he's not done. He took the life of a elementary school teacher. Well, she wasn't elementary school. I think she dealt more with
special needs people.
Yeah, special needs teacher. Her name was Susan Mickelbacher. She was killed on March 19th, 1987. She woke up, she had a migraine, she called in sick to work. She thought, you know what, I'm going to go to the store, I'm going to grab the couple things I need, and that's going to be it. and then I'm just going to go home and hide. He abducted her from the parking lot. And I don't want to say abducted. I want to say he grabbed her from the parking lot. He did a lot of really nasty things with her body that I'm not going to talk about on YouTube because it's information I have because a friend of mine in high school, her parents were really good friends with the Mickelbachers. They went out to look for her. They had more information available that they shared to me that I'm not going to share than you would have gotten from a local news reporter. The local news reporter probably had the information. He just was going to give it, and I'm not going to give it.
Yeah. That's not the point of talking about people like this.
Right.
Is to bring pain to those who've already suffered.
Right. So after he killed Susan Mickelbacher, he took off in a green Ford LTD and headed to Wells, Nevada. Now, he did the killing of Susan Mickelbacher on March 19th. On March 18th, his mother reported her vehicle, which was a Ford green LTD, stolen. But even through the reports of the vehicle being stolen and all the court records, I cannot find what year it was. So all I can say is that a Ford LTD was a sedan. It was available in 2-door and 4-door models. It was the largest sedan that Ford offered in America at that time. So it was a really big, mean car. But he took off to Wells, Nevada. And on his drive to Wells, he drove off the road into some sagebrush and then came out and then wrecked the vehicle and kind of abandoned the vehicle. The police found the vehicle. And they knew that there were questions around that vehicle and the killings in Idaho. So they were looking for the person. So they continued on into Wells, Nevada, because middle of the desert in Nevada, Rhoades isn't going to walk real far. He had broken into a lingerie store in Wells called Lavonda Lingerie. He shot the clerk at the store, but he didn't kill her. He just shot and injured her. Mm-hmm. When the cops showed up, he was in the dressing window of the store, I guess is the best way to put it. And they were able to arrest him with that incident, brought him back to Idaho. He stood trial in Idaho. He was convicted and given life sentences on killing of Stacy Baldwin and Susan Mickelbacher. He was convicted and sentenced to life in prison for the killing of Nolan Haddon. He went through, this was only the second execution in Idaho. The first person that was executed in Idaho, he gave up all his rights to appeals. He's like, I'm guilty, I did it, just kill me. Not filing any appeals, just kill me. Rhoades took advantage of every single appeal he could get. Even last minute, his attorney filed an appeal that, Idaho does it by lethal injection. If they inject him with that stuff, it's going to be done wrong. It's going to be cruel and painful, and
which in the history of lethal injection has been a norm.
Right. But I think because it was the first time ever in Idaho, that's what I'm assuming.
So yeah, and this is, I don't know for sure, but you hear about those things and they could always be trumped up. But yeah, that's what a good attorney does.
Right.
So I don't feel any animus towards the attorney for doing a very good job for his client. I hope if anything ever happens to me, I have a good attorney too.
Right. So he was executed on November 18th, 2011. He drew his last breath. His last words before his execution. He apologized to Mr. Mickelbacher. He apologized for killing Susan. And then he said, and as for the other ones, I can't help you.
Which caused doubt on who actually did it.
And Paul Ezra Rhoades was pretty much the prime suspect the entire time. He tried to say that he had people, or that he helped with killing Susan Mickelbacher. He had nothing to do with the other two, which I don't know. But
so in the years to come, many doors remain locked.
But I can say, and this may be the wrong way to put it, the wrong way to say it, in researching this, it was like, Rhoades is just Rhoades. He's boring. He's not like Ed Gein or Ted Bundy or Ed Kemper. There's nothing.
How many guys like him are out there who still destroyed? I mean, the big guys.
Right.
Because I know I've gone through your famous murderers deck of trading cards, and she's got every one except for Jack the Ripper and what was that other guy that you don't have, the Zodiac guy.
Yeah, that's because nobody knows who the Zodiac was. There's thoughts, there's theories, but whoever the Zodiac killer was, he's just gone.
But how many of these little guys are out there wreaking horrendous sorrow in our communities?
Well, they say that in your lifetime, for the average person, you will encounter 200 serial killers. Not that...
You'll get serial killed.
Right. But just that you will encounter them, which to me is...
But and that's why we pick up hitchhikers, because it's really unlikely they would have a third serial killer in the car. No, and I'm sorry I make a lot of dumb jokes, because that's just how I deal with my black humor. I'm lucky enough to have, I've run across some real monsters. Lucky enough that I've never had to delve this deeply in real life. I mean, you
Right. So, next Monday will be a different killer. It will probably be a little more interesting. Paul didn't have... as far as I could find, his parents were still married. They fought a lot, but they were still married. He was the oldest of four. And if anybody knows what year green Ford LT he had, or he stole from his mother, let me know.
Put it in our comments. Let us know.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was, Kim, a lot of these she's very interested in doing the research on. And I can only sit back and make goofy jokes. But that's why I have Tuesday. Tuesday's going to be just anything Tuesday.
Yeah, Tuesday and Wednesday, we haven't named it anything. It's just a free day.
So maybe I'll come up with something interesting. But yeah, it's hard not to let the sorrows affect you in your empathy. But try to think of ways to make your life better.
Right.
And maybe reach out and touch someone and make their lives better. Who might, cause you always hear these kids who grabbed a gun and went to school. How could you have stopped that? Did anything like that ever happen for you? And could you have said, you know what? Come here. Let me give you a hug. Like that bad joke I made about, oh, yeah, if you're ever going to kill anybody and take over their cabin, go talk to a realtor.
Right.
I think they can make it easy.
So that's just, what we came up with on Paul Ezra Rhoades. The next one will be much more interesting. I'm not ready to announce who it will be, but it will be much more interesting.
Well, hey, it was nice talking with you guys, sharing a goofy joke and an interesting story. Yeah. Please like and subscribe, and we will see you tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye.